My name is Benjamin Gerard. I'm the Director of Bands at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. We are so privileged to be here at the church at Argyle with our Jazz Ensemble 1, which is right behind me, under the direction of Mr. Donald Zentz, who's going to come up right now and direct the jazz band. Thank you so much.
But first, we have to thank you for that beautiful barbecue dinner. How about it, kids? Let's thank them for that beautiful dinner. Y'all know the name Maynard Ferguson? Yes. Well, this came to us via the 1980s with Maynard's band. It's a piece called Mira, Mira. Vasquez on the trombone. Will Banqueta on the alto. John Hensler on guitar. Aidan Dubberly on the drums. And our own Maynard Ferguson, Devin Reale on the trumpet. Y'all know the tune When You're Smiling? Old classic tune, everybody used to know that one. We've got a really nice arrangement. We're going to feature Bernard Johnson on some old school tenor saxophone. Oh, Bernard, you brought your fan club. Very nice. When You're Smiling, folks. Bernard Johnson on tenor. Rory Ings, tickling the ivories over there. And Aiden Dubberly, Dubs on the tubs, driving the bus when you're smiling. Have y'all ever heard of a saxophone player by the name of John Coltrane? Well, one of the most beautiful pieces he ever wrote and recorded was a piece written for his first wife. Her name was Naima, and we have a more modern, contemporary arrangement of it that we're going to feature Bernard on again, since he brought everybody he knows. Here is Naima, folks. Max Bodie on guitar. Bernard on the tenor. We had the good fortune of playing that piece up in Chicago back in December when this group was invited to play at the celebrated Midwest Clinic, the 79th annual Midwest Clinic, a place where only the very best are selected. So I was very proud of these folks, and we actually had the gentleman who wrote that arrangement conduct the band in Chicago. So that was really nice for us. Y'all know the name Count Basie? Well, we have our own Count Basie. Rory, go ahead and get us started. bassy, Jeff Anderson on the trumpet. Aidan Deverly on the drums. Rory Ames on the piano. And Graham Geiler on the bass. That arrangement was written by a bass player. At the time he was 23, his name was John Clayton. He is now 78 years of age. So we dug that one up way back in the library. We have an arrangement of a tune called Broadway. You all know that tune? Broadway, they sound better than me singing. This tune was written by, arranged by a fella in town, kind of a legendary guy. His name is Dr. Bill Prince. He's Professor Emeritus at the University of North Florida, and a good friend of mine, and we had him to work with us back in March. Boy, that seems like 2-3 years ago, Ben. But that was just back in March, and this is a really nice arrangement. I think you'll enjoy it. Broadway. Eric Links on trumpet. You know who on tenor. And how about a hand for Isaiah Newland back here driving the bus on the drums. Bravo, Isaiah. Douglas Anderson has been very blessed for many years. I think it's almost 35 years to have Mr. Rick Painter come to our school and do all of our jazz nights. He shows up, 3:15, sets up, don't have to worry about a thing except batteries. If I get him the batteries, we're okay. It is a joy. And then also he takes care of our DA extravaganza also every year, except one year. And then we had to have him back right away, let me tell you. Let me tell you. So we've been very blessed, very fortunate to have this gentleman working with us. And so I would like the kids on stage to give Mr. Rick Painter a round of applause for all of your gifts that you have given to us. Sometimes when you're in a school, others have very strange ideas. And after you tell them, what are you talking about? What are you thinking? You have to let it roll out for a year and then say, see, now don't say a word. That's what happened with our extravaganza that year. We're going to turn to something that sounds very 1965-ish. I'm looking out here and I'm thinking, some of you know that era. My wife, for example. I'm only teasing. What is it if you can't tease? This was a tune written by Eddie Harris. It's called Freedom Jazz Dance. And we're going to have Bodie on guitar, and we're going to have Spencer play this Kenny G machine. Hold that up, Spencer. That's a soprano saxophone. We all know what that is, thanks to Kenneth Bruce Gorelick, correct? Yeah, but he doesn't play it like Kenny G. He plays it much better. And we're going to hear from Graham Geiler, this time on an electric bass, which was very popular during the 60s. Here is Freedom Jazz Dance. Rory Ames on the Fender Rhodes. Spencer Cardigan on soprano. Bodie Abercrombie on the guitar. And how about another hand for Isaiah Newland back here on the drums? Isn't that a nice one? Rory Ames on the piano and the band. Again, Isaiah Newland. You know, when we were arriving here this afternoon, Isaiah pulled up in this beautiful red Camaro with about 810 horsepower in it. I thought for a minute Mr. Rick Painter had bought another car. But it wasn't him. It was Isaiah. I asked him if he wanted to race. He said, no, my dad wouldn't want that to happen. Rory is one of our All-State folks on this band. We have 4 students make the Florida All-State Jazz Band this year. Rory's one of them. Stand up, Rory. Spencer Cardigan. Our Professor Eric Links on trumpet. And Ian Bricknell on trombone. Very difficult to make the Florida All-State Jazz Band these days. I made it, but that was back in the dark ages, the 70s. It's a lot more competitive these days. But what we're going to do now is we're going to feature our All-Stater Ian Bricknell on a beautiful tune that probably some of you know. It's called The Shadow of Your Smile from the movie The Sandpiper. Here is Ian. Ian Bricknell. That young man is 15 years old playing trombone like that. Ian Bricknell. we have two more for you, but let me again say what a thrill it has been to be asked to come back and play for your volunteer appreciation celebration here at your church. When I told the kids months ago that we would be coming back here, they were just thrilled. However, you know, last year's group was here, but we had 14 seniors in that group last year. And everybody thought we were going to be doomed with 14 seniors. Raise your hand if this is your first time doing this at the church at Argyle. Raise your hand, nice and high. Yeah. The kids that were here told the others, oh, it's a great gig. The barbecue was fantastic. Wait till you taste that barbecue. Boy, they weren't wrong. We're going to go back to the Basie Library, and this one is called I Told You So. And this time we're going to hear a little bit from Bernard, this time on the flute. Lynn on trombone. Bernard on the flute this time. Rory on piano. Our saxophone section. Words cannot even begin to express how proud I am of these kids, folks. Yes, these kids, folks. I mean, as a number of you know, I'm retiring in 9 days. And so this is actually my last concert that I get to be up here on the stage with these outstanding young people. And I am so proud of them. And there's only 4 seniors this year, so it's going to keep continuing. So hopefully I'll be in the audience next year with you all for your appreciation dinner. We have one more that we're going to close with. Do we have time, Mr. Painter? Yes. Okay, we're going to do A Night in Tunisia. Now, who made that one famous? Dizzy Gillespie. And we're going to feature Devin Reale on the trumpet, and we've got Ian again on the trombone and the whole band. A Night in Tunisia. Thank you again for having us here tonight.